there's a question that maybe comes up for people around whether like inclusion is an incremental step on the way to something else, right? Like this is something that's often been said about trans people. We'll come back for you later, we swear, right? Sexual Orientation Non-Discrimination Act passed 2002 here in New York State. They decided that they could leave us for later. So, you know, those ideas about whether or not it's an incremental step, whether or not like an emergent inclusion opportunity is an incremental step are more or less believable in different contexts, right? But I think to even ask that question, we have to do an analysis that's like, you know, measuring these options against our vision, first of all, right? So what is your vision about family structure, and should it determine whether or not you have health insurance, right? Like asking ourselves questions like that, should it determine whether or not we can immigrate, right? Like what's our actual vision of how we want that to look so that we can know whether or not we're going there, what's an incremental step towards, right? Second, you know, the question of whether or not the incremental reform strengthens the oppressive system, right? And what the cost of that might be. Are we making it harder for ourselves? The organization Critical Resistance, someone from there told me once they asked themselves, in 50 years, are we gonna be glad we did this, right? And there's this thing about capitalism that makes us only wanna look like 2 to 3 minutes ahead. So I think it's really, really interesting politically to allow ourselves to ask questions like, in 50 years, of course you can never exactly know what you're gonna feel like in 50 years, or if we're gonna feel anything. But, you know, we might wanna, you know, think about the sort of timelines. I think we also have to ask ourselves, does this divide our community by leaving out vulnerable people, right? Like that's probably the first thing to ask, right? Is this incremental step conveniently eliminating the people who are easiest to eliminate in our community, right? That's always I think that should be a no-go. And also, does this incremental step invite backlashes that will again harm the most vulnerable? Because that's who backlashes always harm. Even though a lot of the rights people have been fighting for only benefit the very few, they usually harm, right, the people who are at the bottom, even though they benefit if they are one of the people at the very top. So these questions require a politics that is more than just like a single issue identity politics, right? It's not a politics where you vote for pro-gay politicians because they have a good gay vote, even though they like hate people on welfare and they want to build a prison, right? Gavin Newsom, right? That instead it's based on a commitment. I don't know if he wants to build a prison, but he probably does. But he definitely hates people on welfare. So it's based on a commitment to an understanding that social justice doesn't trickle down, right? This is the thing that we always talk about. It doesn't trickle down, and so we should center the experiences of the most vulnerable first. Like that's how we should determine our agenda, right? So if we deal with the problems that the rich are having with the economic crisis, right? Like, you know, they used to have $5 million, now they have $3. It's very stressful for them. Then there's no reason to believe that dealing with those problems will address the issues of the poor, right? Like we can make sure they have their bonuses back, and we know that like the real hit of this crisis is still gonna be felt by people at the lowest income, right? Similarly, if you address sort of the problems that white gay people who want to marry an immigrant have, you won't necessarily address the problems of 2 undocumented queer people who aren't partnered with a citizen, right? Although if you address the problems of undocumented queer people, you will address the problem of the person who wants to marry somebody who's an immigrant, right? And if you address the issues of professional white lesbians and parental rights, you won't solve the problem of low-income mothers of color or imprisoned mothers who the child welfare system targets for separation from their families, right? But if you do the reverse, if we really upended the child welfare system and made it about retaining unification of families and communities, then inevitably that would have beneficial effects on rich white gay people who want to make sure that they can, you know, affirm their relationships and their parental rights, right? So, you know, it does trickle up, it doesn't trickle down. We know that. We've had a while to figure that out since Reagan and before. So I'm curious about sort of how we come to still have this politics that's based on a notion of trickle-down social justice, right? I think that this is an exciting moment right now, right, in the U.S. It's, even though we're aware, you know, that many of Obama's policy stances are not sufficiently different from the neoliberal trend, right, and that's a sobering reality. We also see that his election and the work that went into it have mobilized a lot of people and shifted a lot of people's experience of political possibility, right? People feel different about things, and that matters, right? That there's a sense that a lot of people are feeling like they might take up some interventions that they might not have felt comfortable taking up under Bush. I think I see that. I hope I could be making it up. And this is a really important moment for reframings, I think, and for expanding our demands and our expectations, and for taking up a politics that attends to the distribution of life chances, right? Politics that's often called impossible or politically unviable, right? I think that that's what a lot of the politics I'm thinking about are considered.